Welcome, everybody, to the Newcomer series. My name is Ryan McMillan, and I am a journalist with the Calgary Journal. And today, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine, a man that I've known for a while here. His name is Kevin Schwittai. And we'll get into his story, and he'll be able to explain a lot of this to you. Um, but for starters, Kevin, how about you just say your name and just introduce the pronunciation of it, please?
Oh, so you want it said properly then?
It's kind of the goal, usually.
It's Kevin Schwittai.
Okay, I'll do my best to keep that straight. So,
That's
Kevin,
okay.
how long? Okay, Kevin, how long have you been in Calgary, and what brought you to our city? Or I guess we're in Cochrane. We're on the outskirts of Calgary, but how long have you been in this area? What brought you here?
So we moved to the Calgary region in 2001. That's when we moved here, and it was so that my stepdad could end up attending a post-secondary institution in Calgary.
Okay,
That's kind of what brought us here originally.
all right, and brought you here from where?
From Drayton Valley, and before that, I come from Germany.
Okay,
So I was born in Germany and lived there till I guess around age 7, 8.
okay. What part of Germany was that?
I was originally from the eastern part of Germany. Uh, it would be close to the Czech border. So we are talking the closest large city that you easily find on a map would probably be Dresden or Dresden, as it's pronounced here. Uh, we're about an hour away from that. Something a little bit closer
Interesting.
would be the cities like Chemnitz or Zwickau.
Okay. All right. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we're calling this our newcomer series. And I mean, a newcomer can be a very nuanced term. There's a lot of different kind of understandings of it. And so, do you consider yourself a newcomer here?
In many ways, yeah, like it still feels very much like stranger in a strange land or like a fish out of water. As when you come to Canada, particularly from a culture that's a little bit more that has a longer history and tradition, so to speak, you're just more enculturated into kind of the practices and the traditions of said culture, into the regular habits and customs, into the general things that would shape the culture. So there's everything from uh, music to food to the festivals that you go to, the way that you celebrate the milestones on the calendar end up being something that end up forming you both in its practical way. Uh, so as far as the way you expect things to go, the way that you expect your culture to live things out, to even the way that you understand it, and you understand your place within that. So I think for many people when they come to Canada, I'm not unique in this, as I've chatted with many other immigrants from other parts of the world. It feels like they have a cultural identity, and then when they come to Canada, they feel very lost, as Canada doesn't, um, as part of its multiculturalism, kind of prides itself in not having a strict Canadian identity, so to speak. Hence why things like the I am Canadian campaign drive, the whole advertisement campaign, it was funny because everybody would scratch their heads at, so what is a Canadian, or what does a Canadian do? And when the greatest common denominators end up being things like Molson Canadian beer and hockey, it ends up showing that there's uh, Canada doesn't really have that. So when you come from another country and you're trying to adopt things that are strictly Canadian, you're kind of looking around going, but what is it?
Right. I can understand that. And I mean, you kind of answered my next question, actually, which was what would be the greatest challenge in coming here? But so, I mean, obviously, there's no cultural identity to join onto or to latch onto or to understand. Is there anything else you'd want to add to that?
I mean, Canadians, like within, I think it's more regional as far as some of the different distinctive identities that people have. So, for example, in Calgary, uh, there's the Calgary Stampede, and I mean, you could see how after the floods in 2013, the great push for the way in which the city came together to ensure the Calgary Stampede happened. It showed that it was a cultural event of great significance to many. It was something that people cared for. It's just that those are uh, those are kind of large spectacles or festivals that people enjoy, but they're not kind of the same identity shaping. I mean, even when we look at our own town, right, of Cochrane. I mean, we've both lived here for a few years, and the way that the town itself has changed and the way that that's kind of shifted its identity. I mean, I remember when Cochrane was a little bit more of kind of that cowboy emphasis and feel, versus now where you that's pretty much all but gone.
Fair enough. Thank you.
On top of the language, I mean, language is also one of those things that, I mean, as many people who know me for any amount of time notice, when it's a German word, I'll say it in the German way. I was fortunate that I came at that point in time where I was able to lose the accent in both languages, but it also makes it a little bit more challenging, particularly when you're thrust into school at shortly after kind of coming off the plane.
Right. Yeah, that's always something I've noticed about you that whenever a German word or a German name comes up, that's where your accent all of a sudden shows up again. So it's perfect.
Yeah.
So, but at other times, though, talking to you, I wouldn't be able to tell that you're German. So it's kind of that a little bit of a interesting dynamic that goes on there. Um, yeah. So then, I mean, if you could look back at yourself as an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old, what advice would you have given yourself, or would you give yourself for that first week?
Well, I think like so when I came here, I mean, we had uh, everywhere you go kind of has uh, that sense that it gives off, right? I mean, when we think of New York, people always have that thing. Okay, this is New York. Whether that be everything from you know the mob and gangster movies to Broadway and musicals, we all have that thing that we associate with that particular area and what we look for from that. So if you think of Nashville, you would think of music, country music, things like that. Coming to the West, I mean, for me, my imagination was very much shaped by things like the old westerns, things of that nature. So for me, it was just kind of like I would say set expectations accordingly, and be ready to embrace kind of uh, the very fracturedness of Canadian culture
Okay.
and of Canadian identity. So recognize that different regions have great beauty within them, right? I mean, you can look at the way that, uh, for example, it seems like every single region has its own kind of culinary um, things that they pride themselves in, whether that be, uh, I mean, go out to the West Coast and you can enjoy some incredible sushi. Uh, you can go out to Quebec and enjoy some incredible poutine, to fish and chips out on the East Coast and things of that nature. And every single region has its own kind of beauty about it, but those are all more regional identities. And I think one of the greatest fun things you can have in Canada is just uh, taking the time to explore Canada, explore the
Okay.
beauty that is Canada and Canada's great regions.
Okay. It's good. Um, what have been some surprises about life here?
Um, I think Canadians don't know who they are. So you can look at the way that Canadians, for example, from um, you can look at the way that Canadians profess themselves to be. For example, if you look at our politicians, the way that they understand the people they represent, to the way that people on the ground, so to speak, are, the way that they see life. There seems to be like a radical disconnect between the two. I think that's one of the things. And then the way that uh, Canadians, I think they're about 10 years ago, there used to be like a sense of we might not see everything eye to eye, but it could all work out if we sit down at the same table. I think what I've seen since COVID is you have just a sense of distrust that has worked its way through Canadian society far more.
Okay. So, I mean, actually, that's an interesting sort of like little random, maybe I guess, rabbit trail. But then, so if Canadians don't really have a full sense of who they are, then how do you see yourself as a German Canadian?
As a stranger in
Because,
a
sorry,
strange land.
like, pardon?
As a stranger in a strange land.
Now,
No,
sorry,
it's
when I say German Canadian, though, Um, are you a Canadian citizen?
I am not.
So you still have a German passport and
Yep.
citizenship.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So then, yeah. So then, yeah. So then, how do you see yourself as a German Canadian, or how's that? How do you view things then?
So if you picture like um, the film Ice Age, there's that scene where uh, the squirrel, the continents are splitting apart, and he's trying to straddle the two and hang on to the acorn.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. It seems very much like you you're part of uh, two separate kind of cultural identities, and you try to kind of hang on to the best of both of them. So there are things about Canada that I think are fantastic. I think the Canadian openness to other cultures, the Canadian openness to try to accept the best in other cultures, whether that be everything from dress to food to holidays to um, different traditions and holidays and festivals. I think that's a fantastic thing about Canada. I think that's actually greatly enriched Canada itself. Um, so I think for me, it's uh, how do I hang on to both where you come from, the best parts of that, and also trying to embrace some of the new things, particularly kind of all the different influences and forces that kind of shape modern Canada.
Okay. Thank you. I think that kind of gives us a lot to think about and reflect on, and I really appreciate you giving me some time for this. So thank you very much, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Any follow-up questions?
No, I think that pretty much sums it up. So thank you.
Hey, no problem. Have a wonderful evening.
You as well. Bye.
Take care. Bye.